Welcome to Lesson 7-2 on writing and solving proportions using a table. So first let's establish what is a proportion. A proportion is an equation that shows two equal ratios. Now, what I hope you picked up and learned from Lesson 7-1 is that a fraction is an example of a ratio. It is a part to whole ratio would be a fraction. So let's say this was a fraction of a pizza. I have 2/7 of a pizza. How we could say that as a ratio is for every 7 pieces of pizza, I ate 2. So if there were 21 pieces of pizza, how many did I eat? So we solve for equal ratios or proportions exactly how we find equal fractions, which we've already learned how to do. So I hope you see that this isn't something brand new. And just a reminder, a fraction is a part to whole ratio. I'm comparing part of the pizza to the whole pizza. So it's important to understand what type of ratio a fraction represents. So you'll be doing this in class also, but if I want to solve, so how many pieces of pizza do I eat if there are 21? I could do a side to side here and say 7 times 3 is 21, so 2 times 3 is 6. So I have solved that proportion, and my missing value is 6. Now what you'll see later is we will do 2 over 7 equals x over 21. Again, we'll say times 3, and we will say x equals 6. So just so you know, instead of that blank, we'll be putting an x in there. All right, so remember a ratio compares two different groups or quantities. I want you to think of it as a for every statement. So if we look at this chart right here, what could I say? For every 2 smiles, there are 6 stars. So that means if I add 2 smiles, I also have to add 6 stars. So we're going to create some equal ratios or proportions on this table right here. So let's fill in what we have so far. Again, this will be where we write how many smiles we have and how many stars. So first I have 2 smiles and I have 6 stars. Now we're going to just practice, this is sort of extra, writing that ratio as a fraction and then coming up with what we call the ratio value. If you recall, if we wanted to see if two fractions were equal, one way we could do it was divide the top by the bottom and turn it into a decimal. Then we knew if two fractions, when I divided, equaled the same decimal, we knew they were equal. So we're going to do that here as well, just to see if these ratios are equal like we are saying that they are. So if I do 2 divided by 6, I get 0.3 repeating because 2/6 is the same as 1/3. All right, so let's continue our for every. So now, for every 2, so now I added another group of 2, but for every 2 I have to add 6 stars. So since I added another 2 smiley faces, I added another 6 stars. So let's look at our new ratio. Now we have 4 smiles and we have 12 stars. So now our ratio as a fraction is 4 over 12. If I do 4 divided by 12 on my calculator, I would still get 0.3 repeating. All right, so I actually pulled up a calculator so you could see this a little bit better. Again, if I do 4 divided by 12 equals 0.3 repeating. Now, you'd probably also agree with me that 2/6 is equal to 4/12. Why? Because if I multiply 2 by 2, I get 4. Then remember, whatever we do to the top, we do to the bottom. So if I do 6 times 2, I get 12. So 2 times 2 is 4, 6 times 2 is 12. So you can see that they're equal fractions and they're also equal ratios. Also, you can see that their ratio value is equal. So 2 to 6, 2 smiles for every 6 stars is the same as the ratio of 4 to 12. Either way, you can see that the stars is 1/3 the number of, or the smiles is 1/3 the number of stars. Or you can look at it backwards and say that no matter what, there has to be 3 times as many stars as there are smiles. So that's another relationship here, times 3 here. So you can see the relationship here also is the number of stars is always 3 times the number of smiles. So that's another way to figure out values on the table is if you know 1, you can just, if you see the relationship is times 3, you can just multiply by 3. Well, this should remind you kind of our function tables also. If 2 goes in the machine, then what's our rule? Smiles times 3 comes out of the machine. We could also call this x and then say that y is equal to 3 times x. So we take whatever x is, we multiply it by 3. So there's a lot of multiplicative relationships you can see here. All right, let's keep going. So for every 2 smiles, there's 6 stars. So we did another group of 2 smiles. That means we added another group of 6 stars. So now how many smiles do we have total? Now we have 6. And how many stars total? 6 times 3, we have 18. So we could also say the ratio is now 6 to 18, which you'll notice is also 1/3. And if I do 6 divided by, let's clear that. If I do 6 divided by 18, that also still gives us the same ratio value of 0.3 repeating. So we know that these ratios are equal. Remember, a proportion is 2 equal ratios. So here's what I'd like you to try. How about, notice what we're doing is we're adding 2 smiles each time. So how many stars would there be if there's 8 smiles? How about if there's 10? How about if there's 12? So use your relationship. See if you can figure that out. You can go ahead and pause the video and try to fill in the rest of that table. Then create each of these ratios on the table to a ratio written as a fraction. And see if your ratio value is the same for all of those. All right, so let's take a look and see how you did. So if there are 8 stars, you can see that that's 4 groups of stars. So 4 times 2 is 8. So to get from here to here, we did times 4 because there's 4 groups. So we're going to do the same thing here. To get from 6 to this value, we also have to do 4 groups. There's 4 groups of 6, so it's 4 times 6. You can see that there's 24 stars. All right, if we have 10 stars, that's 5 groups of 2, so we get 10. That means we have 5 groups of 6, which is 30. If we have 12 stars, that is 6 groups of 2, so we have 6 groups of 6, which is 36. So check to see if you created the right ratios over here. And again, if you divide the top by the bottom, for every single one of these ratios, you will get 0.3 repeating. All of these ratios would simplify to 1/3. We simplify ratios the same way we would simplify a fraction. So using this table, let's say that these were a couple problems that we were being asked to solve. And let's say our units are smileys over stars. And you knew that there are 2 smiles for every 6 stars. So the question says, if you have 10 smileys, how many stars do you have? Well, you could do an up and down relationship and say, well, how do I get from 2 to 6 times 3? So we could do 10 times 3. That equals 30. You could also do a side-to-side relationship. How do I get from 2 to 10? That's times 5. So then I would do 6 times 5, and I would also get 30. So you can solve those either way. Let's try number 2. Again, I'm comparing smileys to stars. I have 6 smiles for every 18 stars. So let's do a side to side. How about if I have 12 smiles? Well, if I double the number of smiles, I have to double the number of stars. That gets me to 36. Okay, you could also look at the relationship between the smiles and the stars. I see that there are 3 times as many stars as smiles. So if I do 6 times 3 is 18, then I would do 12 times 3 gets me 36. So there's a lot of different ways to solve. And then if I do 2 over 6 equals 10 over 30, I know that's true because I could do cross products to prove that. 6 times 10 is 60. 30 times 2 is 60. I prove it that way. I could prove it by dividing, and I would get 0.3 repeating, 0.3 repeating. So this is how a table can help me find equal ratios or proportions. So let's try some problems here. I'm going to do a couple with you. You're going to do the rest on your own. Let's do this one together. I have a bunch of marbles in a bag. When I drew out 5 marbles, 2 of them were blue. When I drew out 10 marbles, 4 were blue. How many marbles would you predict to be blue if I drew out 35? Okay, now remember, order really matters. It says when I drew 5. So does it go in this category or this? This says number of marbles I drew. This is how many were blue. So even though this is first, it doesn't go here automatically. We have to look at the labels. So I drew 5, and then it says that 2 were blue. So 2 were blue there. Then when I drew 10, so put that here, 4 were blue. How many marbles would you predict to be blue if I drew 35? So I'm going to put that here. Let's fill in the rest of the table. Okay, well, if I look at this relationship, that doesn't work very nicely. I can't just say there's 2 times as many marbles that I drew as blue. So let's try a relationship side to side. If I double the number of blue marbles times 2, then I have to double the number of marbles that I drew. Okay, if I triple, let's do times 3 now, the number of blue marbles, so 2 times 3 is 6, then I have to triple the number of total marbles. 5 times 3 is 15. All right, let's keep going with that. We did times 2 and times 3. Let's do times 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 5 times 4 is 20. Okay, let's do times 5. If I do the number of blue marbles times 5, I get 10. But then I would have to do 5 groups of total times 5, which would equal 25. All right, so we can keep going. And I can even skip ahead and just say, to get from 5 to 35, I have to multiply by 7. There's 7 groups. So to get from here to here, I would also do times 7. 2 times 7 is 14. So if I draw 35 marbles, I would predict that 14 of them would be blue. So you're going to go ahead and keep working on some of these problems with your partner. I do want to just show you the challenge really quick. This grid has black and white ratio of 5 to 4. So for each 3 by 3 block, you can see that there's 5 blacks and 4 whites. So what you're going to do is you're going to take every 3 by 3 block and you're going to color it like this, and you're going to keep track of your black and white in the table. So for example, I would get started by coloring this black. You could just color with a pencil, or a black crayon might be faster actually. And I'm going to copy that. And I can see that there's 5 black and 4 white. All right, well, how about if I copy that pattern again? I can see that now I have 10 black total and 8 white total. So you're going to keep doing that and fill in your table as you go. All right, good luck. Work hard with your partner.